right, so here's my question. I needed to talk to somebody like yourself that sort of can cut through all the bullshit. I've spent a lot of money on amps and hype trying to get a decent sound. I've been a musician since I was age 5, but I only got involved with stringed instruments about 15 years ago. But when it comes to amplifiers, there's every kind of advertiser in the world. There's 99 million channels of bullshit YouTube video stuff out there. And most of these guys don't know the capacitor from a diode. So, I mean, they don't know anything. I'm buying all these expensive reissue amplifiers. I'm buying two of those what's his name? Brandon Montgomery. He makes those Bluetooth tone amplifiers that are supposed to be like Dumble copies. The point is that what I never thought to do was to talk to somebody who works on these amps and knows all the real amps. Like you just did a video recently on Blackface, or I think that's the name of the company. It's all circuit board stuff. I mean, you'll never be able to fix it. There are chips on it you can't duplicate. There are EEPROMs that are programmed from factories that you can never duplicate. I want a tube amp that I can send to anybody that knows analog circuits that can fix it. And I'm looking for a really good tone. So I think I had, sort of sent you a list of some of the stuff I had bought. And so either A, maybe you could tell me some books I could read that would cut through all the BS, or just kind of give me a rough idea of where to start because of all the disinformation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I suppose so. Now, let me find that list again of the stuff that you said you already had. Hang on one second. Let me pull that up in an email. Okay, the hand-wired Marshall, have you had it open?
No.
What year is it?
It's brand new. It's a reissue.
What I'm doing right now is looking up gut shots for that amp to see if anybody else has had it, because I haven't had one on my bench, so I can't speak directly to that amp without seeing what it looks like.
They used to have certain capacitors and certain capacitors and things that would give you a specific sound that they don't make anymore. So if they go out and make recreations, I don't know if you get the same sound. That's where marketing comes in versus what a technician is going to tell you.
If you get something that's polypropylene capacitor, it's going to be the tone of the capacitor is not going to vary enough for you to notice as a listener. Especially on a guitar amp. A guitar amp is something that's very subjective. It doesn't follow the same rules as like a hi-fi amplifier. A lot of people who are audiophiles, they're into hi-fi amps, and a lot of things that they will say that pertain to hi-fi amps and getting the best fidelity out of an amplifier in that world does not apply in the guitar world, because you're talking about something that is an instrument. The amp itself is part of the instrument that is the electric guitar. So it's, and tone is subjective. So that's not something. The only thing I really look at in terms of capacitors, unless you're talking about the difference between like a poly style capacitor or ceramic style capacitors, they do have different tone because they have an element of microphonics about the tone that does change the way that the amp behaves, for sure.
Okay.
And you can get really caught up and lost in all the mumbo jumbo about capacitors, and I wouldn't bother with any of that if I were you. Really, what you want to look for is something that is wired in such a way that you can always repair it. The problem with this modern PCB stuff, and I'm still looking for yours here. I would have to believe that the HW, the hand-wired 1959, is probably laid out pretty similar to some of these Marshall clones that you see. That probably is hand-wired in the way that the older Marshalls are hand-wired, and it's probably okay. It's probably one of these that would be fine, to hold on to, and you could trust that if it does break down, you're going to be able to fix it. It's not just going to end up in the garbage.
Well, I found my list. Well, so anyway, I've got two Bluetooth drives. One's a 70s voicing, and the other is called a South Saturn Delta voicing.
Okay.
I got the Marshall 1959 handwire reissue. I've got a Sur Corso recording amp. I've got a Badger 35, a Sir Badger 35, and the Fender 64 Custom Deluxe Reverb is what it is. It's supposed to be an exacting reissue of the 64 Fender Custom Deluxe Reverb. And if you go to Fender's site, they show a gut shot of the actual guts of it. But
yeah, the Fender reissues, like the 68 reissue, 65 any of that stuff, man, that's marketing crap. And the stuff that's inside of that, if you were to open that up, that's going to look pretty much like any other amp on the market today. And invest in an actual old silver face Fender if you want the Fender tone. You can get bargains on the silver face stuff, and a lot of the stuff that you'll read about, oh, it got so much worse after Leo left the company and CBS like drove him into the ground and did this and that.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some differences, like in the way that they tend to be wired slightly messier, but that's not something that can't be corrected if it ever bothers you or ever causes problems in the amp.
Right.
So focus on getting something like, from say 1967 or 68 through about 1972. Any of that stuff is going to be good stuff, man. It's all very comparable. Even if they change some of the wiring on those amps, usually they were improvements. I'll be honest with you. So a lot of the things that they did to change them were things that it stabilized the amps. It made them just it made them less prone to oscillations and things. Like if you got a tube that was really noisy or something, like it would perform better under certain circumstances. And they did that. They did that because they didn't want all these returns, because they, as a big corporation, they were looking at the bottom line and saying, oh, why are we getting all these amps back? Oh, it's because some of them were just simply noisy and they had a noisy tube or something. Well, he shouldn't have returned it for that reason. Yeah. It's like, how can we make these amps all sound good, even with noisy tubes? And they would come up with little tweaks that they could do to make it, to make it sound better, even with bad tubes.
I got it.
And just things like that, make them a little more rugged and stuff like that. So, I mean, it wasn't all bad. You'll get some messy wiring from time to time on some of those where, the wires are so kind of jumbled up that they do cause interference and problems. But that's not that, it's not that widespread of a problem. And just typically, Fenders, early Silverface Fenders are fine. They're great amps.
Yeah, I saw Jimmy Herring play. I saw Jimmy Herring a few years ago play one of those amps, and it sounded great. So,
right. Okay, so this is what the inside of your Marshall probably looks like. I think, according to this website, this is the gear page, and there's a thread here about this.
Right.
And they're talking about doing mods on this is, I believe 1959 HW hand wired. Okay. So this should be your amp. And you can see right here, it's all laid out on these turrets.
Yeah.
So it's
a turret board.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is exactly what you want, man. That's what amp techs love to see, and will probably love to see till the end of time. It's like opening up the hood on a vintage Ford or something, I mean, it's you can get parts. It's all easy to see. It's easy to work on. There's plenty of room. There's even an extra spot right here. If you ever wanted to add another 12AX7, you can, and expand, maybe make an effects loop or whatever mods you want to make on this.
Yeah.
Let me see if we can find some.
There it is. It's $24.95. Yeah, you go to images and you should be able to see.
Is that this guy right here then?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay. Yeah, forgive my ignorance on this. I don't, people assume I know every single, amp model that's out there, and I don't. I'll be honest with you. But I know principles, and I know what's a good amp. And
there you go. There
we go.
That's the shot.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a thing wrong with that I could see so far. I mean, they've got all the filament wires are coming up and down to the sockets, just like the old ones. And I mean, some of the wiring is a little bit excessive but they're getting out around things, and I think they're doing this so they can keep all the wires that have high voltages away from the wires that carry signal.
I see.
So it looks like they're following some principles here that are good principles.
Well, if you can understand, I mean, my thinking as a layman is if I was going to buy something, I could buy something that was old. I don't know how to fix it. I could always send it somewhere and have it fixed. But, typically if I buy something on Reverb, I got to probably go get it recapped to begin with, and it's got to be clean and recapped. So I thought, well, if I spend a little extra money and get something like this that's point to point, then maybe it'll last a little longer. As far as whether it sounds exactly like the one from 1964, who knows? You were talking about hi-fi stuff earlier. I mean, there are people that buy $7,000 granite marble turntables and $2,000 RCA jacks to listen to reel tape, and can sit there with a straight face and tell you that they can hear the difference. And I say, bullshit. I mean, I don't have bad hearing, but you tell me, how the hell can you tell the difference from a $20 patch cable to a $2,000 gold-plated RCA cable? It's just nuts.
And then there's people who they go as far as to buy like gold-plated power cables and stuff like that. It's like, oh no, come on.
So I think a lot of it sounds like we're sort of in agreement that a lot of that is just BS hype for manufacturers just to grease money.
I'm not even sure if many manufacturers really take part in all that hype, because they know that they're going to get called out on bullshit a lot of the time, and at least in the guitar world. There's always going to be somebody to come in and call them on their bullshit. But this right here, what I do like about this, and one thing that it has over the older ones is, I don't know if you could see it or not, but you see how they have the lines painted for the installers of all these components, like what value is supposed to go there. And like, they even have it labeled like C14, R64, or whatever the resistor is marked on the schematic. It's referenced on that board. So all you would ever have to do is go to the schematic. You could see instantly what component that was, because it's marked right there on that board. So that's even better, honestly, than the older ones.
Let me guess, the worker that's doing it goes to the bin and goes to the C4 bin, pulls out that resistor, puts it on the board to even make it more simpler.
Correct. That's it. And it also is going to ensure, because it's printed like that, it's going to ensure that there are less mistakes at the factory, and any old idiot can do it, so they're, and because, factory workers are factory workers, and they make mistakes. They have lunches and breaks, and, they want to go for a smoke, or they want to go home early, or whatever is on their minds. They mess up, but this makes it less likely they're going to mess up. So that to me is a good thing. So yes, I take back what I said about that, about at least this particular reissue. Now, some of the reissues that Fender's been coming out with, that are not like this, they're not reissues at all. They're just all on PCBs, and they're not worth messing with. You might as well.
They do have another model that's like this, that's like an electronic version. It's like $1,200, and it's all electronics, but they claim that it sounds the same. Well, if it's all the same, why is it one's,
you mean it's all on printed circuit boards?
Yeah, it's all electronically voiced. It's real light. I think it weighs like,
oh, right.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So all I know is I'm retired now, and I don't have to deal with everything I used to have to deal with. I'm probably the only conservative astronomer you'll ever meet. So I never met another one in my entire career. So, or conservative, libertarian, whatever you want to call me. But when they started putting up, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
Well, I just didn't know if you want to chat for a minute. So anyway, I was going to I'll just leave out the names of the meetings and things, but I was going to these national and multinational meetings. And about the time that I got sick of going there was when they started taping over the men's and women's bathrooms, saying gender neutral this, and, and it's just like, to me, it's like a double think. It's like, what's that movie, 1984, where they try to, the sky is blue, or, they tell you something, it's exact opposite. It's like, you don't want a cognitive dissonance, but anyway, so, you see these young college kids coming in trying to get their degrees, and they have to buy into all this dogma to get their papers published and everything. And it's absolutely horrible. And the state of the music's a good release.
Well, music has gotten it's pretty much the same. It's like Hollywood or any of that other. It's really insular, and it seems like the people at the top, they grab a hold of the whole mechanism by which the industry works, and then you're not allowed admittance into the club,
Right.
if you don't share these certain views that these people have. And that's really insidious when it comes to science, because science is supposed to be something we're allowed to ask questions, and that is what science is. It's the process by which we ask questions and prove something
Right.
to be false.
I mean, you prove a theory, but the thing about it is, I mean, there's things we can talk about right now. If you were to put this on YouTube, it would get banned in a New York minute. And we won't even go into biology, but, there are facts in biology that you and I know that are factual. I mean, but we won't even go there. What I did is I built my own robotic telescopes back in the early 90s before they were actually commercially available, and built them from scratch. And so I started a team of 25 researchers in 5 countries. And what we did is, there's, you can see, that's the first telescope I ever built from scratch.
This one here.
So what happened was, is I was in 1998, I started, discovering supernovas, which are stars at the end of their life. And so, so I found, like, a university might find 3 or 4 in 10, 15 years. So we were finding, I don't know, we found how many? I mean, 300 and something. I don't know. Anyway, I found a whole bunch of them. So in my little microcosm of McDonald's, inventory of people, I became well known. So these technology companies hired me to go out and use their products, and not like a YouTuber, but I'm talking about, I used in my research what they sold. And so then I started going to trade shows all over I was spending 3 or 4 months a year on the road, and then helping them design their products. So, and the page you just pulled up just shows, different discoveries and stuff. So now things have changed to where we have space probes, and we have these massive multi-billion dollar surveys. The average university or the average person will never find a comet. They'll never discover a supernova ever again, because technology, like everything else, is just taken over. So I just was born in a certain niche of time that I was able to do this. So
that's kind of like it's like becoming a rock star, really. There was a time when you could reasonably say, hey, if I really practice this instrument, I could become a rock star. And if I get good enough at this and I write good songs, and I could become a rock star. But now, that job description is pretty much gone. It's like there was a window of time for it, and it's past.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Napster, the whole music industry is turned up on its head, and I mean, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I mean, people don't even sing anymore. It's all auto-tuned, and everything's melodined. It doesn't even sound like music anymore. Remember when we used to have albums like Yes and Rush and all? They would be like theme albums where they'd have a cover, and that you could flip through it and it'd tell a story. The lyrics would actually tell a story.
Or Jethro Tull.
Concept to them. Yeah, they'd have a concept.
Yes.
And now it's just cut and paste. It just, I can't even stand it. But I mean, I'm not belittling people that like it. I'm just saying that from my generation, I don't like it. It's just not pleasing to me.
And what's interesting is, even back in the day, there was pop music that people would look down their noses at and say, well, you're not serious. You're not reaching for and some people would even look at the people who were reaching to make a masterpiece as being pretentious. Like a lot of people thought that Yes or Jethro Tull and stuff like that was just overly pretentious, whatever, blah, 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 which, I mean, maybe there's an argument for that. And they would call pop music bubblegum music, and maybe some of it was, but if you listen back to it, that stuff actually still sounds relevant. Whereas the crap that's put out today is so cookie cutter and so bad. And so,
how many, I mean, it's committee written music now. It's like the artists that they have I don't think they even write their own music. I think it's a bunch of people get in a room and figure it out, because they don't. It's like I mean, I don't know for sure, but they all the if you go to any pop station, it all sounds the same. It's like they must have some recipe where they just cut it out. Okay, we got to have this many beats per second, because it's this close to the heartbeat. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's not. Remember old rock and roll records? They actually would change the tempo through time. It would pick up and slow down, and you could feel something out of the record. Don't have that anymore. So.
Yeah, it was like classical music in that regard. It wasn't just like that. That's why I stopped liking a lot of metal music, because it got to the point. Heavy metal, like in the 80s, used to do that. It would start and stop, and you would have all these key changes and time signature changes, and there are some metal musicians that still do that. So I'm not trying to paint everybody with the same brush, but it got to the point at one point, it was just like, it seemed like everything that you heard coming from metal, it started out at one dynamic level and just finished the song at the same dynamic level. And I thought to myself, if I'm over here criticizing these pop artists for doing this, then why am I not also criticizing these guys who aren't, obviously they're not being as creative as they should be here either. So yeah. But I wanted to ask you about this. This is something I ran across when I was researching your observatory. So this was the astronomy picture of the day. Tell me about this. It says that this was discovered in 2012, so that wasn't that long ago. No,
let me see. Let me see. Can I move it? I can't move. Oh, I can't move it. What this is a picture of somebody taking a picture of one of my discoveries in color. Oh, so okay. If you go to you see where it says down there at the bottom somewhere, it should say in search. See where it says archive, index, and search.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Right there. Click search.
Okay.
And then put my last name in, Puckett. All right. Okay. And hit search. And you'll find there are a bunch of pictures that I've taken that were on ALPD, Astronomy Picture of the Day. But the one you grabbed a hold of was just one that somebody had taken a picture of one of my supernovas in a pretty cluster of galaxies.
Wait a sec. So you discovered this supernova?
No, I didn't discover that. That's just an image I took.
Oh, you took this image with your observatory.
Right. That's just an image that I took.
You're kidding. So where is this?
Well, I mean,
it's the Rosette Nebula.
Yeah, it's just a big ball of hydrogen gas, but and they give them sort of slang names. I mean, essentially it's there's several different catalogs. You've got a Messier catalog, a New General catalog. There's a bunch of different catalogs for all these objects in the sky. So
gotcha.
But if you click the back button, just to see, like scroll down, keep scrolling down, keep scrolling down. See some of these they use over and over the years.
Yeah.
But like the one at the very bottom, the comet picture, that was Hale Bopp. Remember that bright comet years ago?
Yes.
In the 90s, that's the very head of the comet and the jets coming off of it. Isn't that neat?
It is.
But yeah, I got so burned out with astronomy with my last job that I did. I just I said to hell with it. So my telescopes are in storage. I don't even want anything to do with it anymore. So I bought a sailboat, and now I'm either on my sailboat or I'm here trying to practice. What I need to do is find some old guys like me to play with, but everybody, I don't know what the deal is there, but I don't know you're in Louisville, right?
I am. Where are you located again?
You're in Atlanta.
Georgia. Okay. Atlanta.
Atlanta. So, my wife went to University of Louisville. She was, she mastered in music at the University of Louisville. She was in organ studies. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife works at the university. So
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how long she's been working there, but it's probably been a long time. Not that long. But in any case, yeah, this is just a NASA outreach thing where they post neat pictures to outreach to the public is what this is.
Right. But that's, I've got books of astronomy on my coffee table, showing like the Hubble Deep Field and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, it was kind of being popularized in the 90s because of, the launch of Hubble and everything. It kind of became a mainstream consciousness kind of thing. And I had already been interested in astronomy anyway, because I'd read all of Einstein's general and special relativity theory when I was in high school, and I don't pretend to have understood all of it, but I got the general gist and the way that he kind of moved things along from Newtonian physics and all that kind of stuff. So I was interested in all this black holes and all that stuff. I would get library books on that stuff when I was supposed to be reading some kind of fictional something, whatever the teacher had told me to read. I was over here reading this nonfiction, astronomy and stuff. So that's what captivated me about what you're doing, because you're actually living sort of a dream that I had for a minute when I was a teenager and maybe in my young 20s, that I just had these designs that, well, I don't know, maybe I'll be an astronomer, or.
Well, it's too bad all my stuff's taken down. I had it to the point where you control it from any web interface. Like you could be sitting in Louisville and run it at night and slew the telescope around, take pictures, download them to your computer, basically just autonomous. You sit there and run it if you wanted to. So
were you, is there not some kind of market or some kind of grant system where you could set up your telescope and just let it run and let people have access to it and leave that as just? Well,
I thought about that. What I did is, instead of it being all me, because I started doing this full time in 1998, rather than be all about just me, I wanted to bring other people in, because I was shooting. The way it works is I was imaging like 1,200 galaxies a night. So the telescope would synchronize on a star somewhere, and then it would slew to all these different galaxies in succession. And then I create a reference library. Then I'd go back a week later or 2 days later, and I'd shoot the same galaxies, and I would animate those fields. And when a new star showed up, then I know I'd have either type 1 or type 2 supernova. Right. And anyway, there's tools to tell you whether it's an asteroid or not, because we have what's called a minor planet center orbital computer. And you can take the exact time to a second on your computer, which is easy to do now, and you plug in those coordinates to the site, and it tells you, boom, that's an asteroid, so right away if it shows up, it's not a supernova. So it's the way you discern it. Right. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but you get the idea. So.
Yeah. No, that's also how they discover a lot of stuff like binary stars and possible planets and other.
They use interferometry, they'll take the photometry of a star, which is the photometry is a fancy word for measuring the brightness.
Yeah.
And as the planet goes across the star dims a little bit. And that's how they haven't seen these damn planets. They've just seen the stars dim.
The effects. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you know, the physics books are getting rewritten about every 10 years. So it was 1860, we had the first combustion engine. And so now we're so smart, and we're so, we were on horses until the 1900s, and we think we're so special.
This is what kills me too about science, is, you as well as I know that science marches forward on the questions that get asked of the status quo and the authorities of any given period, because had these people not come forward and said, well, maybe this is something different. Maybe this phenomenon we're seeing is, or if Einstein hadn't come along and said, well, the perihelion motion of planets, there's a procession to things that disproves Newtonian physics, that we haven't accounted for all the math in that, and the bending of light around stars and things like that. If somebody hadn't questioned these things, we would never have known about it. We'd have never known about the redshift of any of that stuff that allowed us to see which direction things were moving in relation to us. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the redshift. And also the Eddington experiment, which you're talking about, where they're talking about light bending around the stars.
Yes.
We had that eclipse 2 or 3 years ago. They actually recreated the Eddington experiment and took the stars around the eclipse and were able to measure the distorted positions. That was pretty cool.
I was trying to tell my daughter about that. We were trying to witness the eclipse, and I was telling her about all this stuff, and it was just going right over her head. But it's just all this stuff came flooding back, from all the days when I would read a lot on this.
Well, space is sad too. I mean, you look at we were hitching rides on Russian rockets, and
Oh man, I know.
Just all the things that have happened in my lifetime. I never thought that, and I'm just going to say this, I never thought that I would live in the United States of America and people would openly talk about how great socialism was. I never thought in my lifetime that that would happen.
It's madness. You know what, Tim, I've met several people like this, but there's one that really stands out. I know a fellow who was he grew up in old Czechoslovakia, you know, and it became the Czech Republic.
He knows oppression.
He was there when they were confiscating people's property and taking their farms. And then they not only would they take their farms, okay, but then they would run the sons of bitches into the ground because socialism doesn't work, and because top down, you know, directives like that don't work. You can't make people do what you want them to do. That's not human nature. Capitalism is the only system that recognizes that human nature is what it is. You're never going to overcome that. And it's the only one that tries to let human nature work for the benefit of the most people possible. Now, it's never going to be perfect because human nature is what it is. But you and I both know socialism is doomed to fail from the very start.
Except for the people at the very top, the ones that want to control everything, the technocratics. They are the ones that control the top.
And even they are doomed to fail at some point, because eventually the proletariat will rise up and throw off their shackles and put new shackles on. But those people who had the shackles on them, eventually they get their comeuppance. But it's just one series of revolutions and violence, upheaval after another. Is usually what countries like that fall into.
You know, it kind of makes you wonder, if we spend as much money and effort and time and research as we do in baseball and basketball and football, we might be at we might be out of the solar system by now. Yeah. Think of the resources and all that are wasted in the last century. And I don't care what anybody says. 120 years ago, you played stickball as a kid or whatever. You grew up, you did adult things. And the public now is mesmerized by sports and entertainment. And you see where I'm going with this. I mean, it's like I went down the rabbit hole 20 years ago. I just wish I had not, because ignorance is bliss, right?
It's stupidity, Tim. It's stupidity has been held up on a pedestal as if it's something to be aspired to. And, you know, I never, you know, I would be listening to Beethoven and stuff when my peers were all listening to crap, you know. It's just, and I never understood it. How can you listen to that crap when you've got this, you know, majestic music that's like right there? And not only is it right there, it's right there in a way that's never been available before in the history of humankind. It's like you've got it, you can have it on these little devices that follow you around, and you know what I mean? It's like the whole world is open to you, and this is what you choose to do with your time. You know, you've got the internet and you're using it for cat pictures, you know. it's
these little computers. The computer is what, 10, 20, 50, 100 times what we landed the lunar lander with, and we're looking at cat pictures. So.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's kind of the tragedy of humankind. But I guess that's
what it is.
It is what it is. We are flawed. So.
But listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I think you see I'm on this tone. I'm not on a tone journey. I just don't want to spend a ton of money for something that's not going to sound any better than an old 5EA amp kit that I can, you know, buy or whatever. I mean, it's a lot of hype out there.
How much did you pay for the Fender, and is it doing what you want it to do? I mean, is it getting close?
Remember, I'm the guy that can't hear the $2,000 cable, so it's hard to tell. You know, I don't have a 1964 reissue sitting next to it, but I mean, it sounds very good. It's very touch sensitive. I mean, you know how some amps they're just really touchy. You know, you got like 14 levels of volume, and some amps you got 2 or 3. You know what I mean by that, with your fingers and how you attack it.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a good, in that Fender, there's a nice attack range in it. I mean, it's very touch sensitive. So that is an amp person, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's, that's the thing. That's the difference between something that's hi-fi oriented and something that is guitar oriented. Is the guitar amp is supposed to respond with, your touch, and it's part of it's an extension of your fingers. The amp is.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of books and things that people can read, but you're really deep level, board level. I watch a lot of your videos. I enjoy them, by the way. When they're talking about certain tubes, I know, things like that. I mean, there's only so much detail you can go into because you're working on specific products, but I'll just keep looking. And I guess at the end of the day, like you said about 30 minutes ago, it's all subjective. Find what I think sounds good. Yeah. I just think spending 5 prices for something that's not needed is stupid.
Oh, absolutely. Have you ever tried any old Valco amps? Because they are a different animal. If you haven't found, okay, they made Supro amps and Gretsch amps and National amps back in the day.
I've heard of Supros and Nationals.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the Supros, they have the reissues, but they're not real. They're not like the old Supros, but like the Supros from the 1960s and 50s. They usually have kind of their own thing, especially the ones from the mid 60s. They really got into doing amps that were, they're American made. They're very nicely made. Yeah. And they're different from your typical, Fender tone that you would have gotten at that time, and even Marshall stuff. It's like, or Vox, they've got their own thing going on, really. And if you listen to Link Ray, like early Link Ray stuff, that song goes drown, drown, drown.
Yeah.
Brown, brown, brown.
It sounds like you're walking into a cantina somewhere. I remember. Yeah.
Really gritty, really raw, really just kind of they've got a different thing.
I think Tarantino used that in a movie.
Yeah, it's so immediately recognizable because of that tone. I mean, you could just, that tone is really, Jimmy Page, that was one of his heroes, and he used a Supro on their early albums. That's what he recorded with. Yeah. So it wasn't a Marshall he was recording with. He was recording with Supros on the first couple of Zeppelin albums.
I'll be darned.
So I don't know if that's something that, intrigues you. That's definitely something to look into, because they're some of my favorite amps ever. Those and Dan Electros from that era are some of my favorites. And they are easy to work on too. They're very easy.
Yeah. I'll look into those. Maybe sometime I know you're limited on time, but as you go through these videos, you're always shouting out some good channels. Maybe sometime make a video of just some good channels for people like us laymen to watch that are informative, because there's so much shit out there. It's good to get some, heads up on what are some good channels to watch.
Well, definitely, you should subscribe to Uncle Doug's channel. That's a good one. There's another channel called D-Lab. Guy named Terry does that channel, and he opens up a lot of amps, builds amps, shows the troubleshooting of amps too. There's this new one called Fazio Electric. That's a really attractive young lady, actually, that runs that channel, and she's a tech. And that one, I've noticed a lot of good stuff coming from her lately. There's also Blue Glow Electronics, and I've actually got I've got a link on. If you go to my channel page, you'll see some tabs across the top. If you go to channels. It has some channel recommendations there, or if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's some channel recommendations, and
I'm 59, so I'm 59. I guess I'm socially media idiot, but yeah, I'll go check them out.
A few of those are really good channels too. You should check out just to have videos will pop up, and you'll learn a lot of stuff from those guys.
Well, listen, hey, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me. I knew you were hoping it wasn't just going to be some dumb question thing, but at least we got to cover a lot of ground.
Tim, I had a great time. We probably could have talked for another 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, if you're ever in Atlanta, if I'm ever up in Louisville, I'll have to get you a steak dinner or a salad or whatever. So,
hey, I'll take you up on that. I'll buy you a beer too, or you come up here, I'll buy you a bourbon. Tell you what, one more thing too. If I do post this to my channel, I just want my viewers to know, Tim is in Atlanta. He's got some good amps. He's got some good equipment. Hit him up and he'll jam with you, man.
There you go.
All right.
There you go. Thank you so much, Brad.
See you, Tim. Take care, buddy.
Bye.